All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. So I'll call to order Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council's October 2025 meeting. Happy to be here in Philly, hosted by the Notary once again. And we're going to start here with our executive committee. We were briefly met in closed session this morning with just XCOM to discuss the recipient of the Rick C. Savage Award. And our main item this morning for XCOM is to discuss our 2026 proposed actions and deliverables. And we'll go through this as the full council. We have a few members of the public joining us in person and online as well. I'll turn it over to Chris now. Well, actually, we have accepted all our new council members, but we do have a new liaison. So I want to introduce Ted Platt as our new liaison from the New England Fishery Management Council. We have Carrie here from the South Atlantic as well. Welcome as always. Okay, sorry, Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Philadelphia. This is the first part of a two-step process. Basically involves a council approving a implementation plan for the upcoming year. So typically what we do is we go through our actions and deliverables that we promised we get done for the current year and then move into the upcoming year. So I'm never sure how to do this in a way that, doesn't involve me reading all this, but certainly I'm not going to read all this. But if you look at the items behind the tab, the first one is titled 2025 Proposed Actions and Deliverables. And this is a status update as to where we're at for 2025. So you can take a look at each one of those tasks and look at and see how they're basically dealt with. So there's completed, in progress, ongoing, delayed, or postponed. So take a look at the first set of deliverables for summer flounder, scup, and black sea bass. And again, I'm not going to read these all to you, but we've completed almost all of them. We have this rec sector separation and data collection amendment in play, and we'll be talking about that this week. So that's in progress. If you look at the next page, it's bluefish. So again, everything completed for bluefish for 2025, including developing the 2026 to 2027 specifications. So I'm going to quickly go through these, but certainly if you have any questions or comments, just stop me. Just raise your hand and then we'll talk about them. The next set is the tilefish, golden and blue line tilefish. We have the first one is develop 2026 to 2028 specifications for blue line tilefish. So remember our conversation and some of the issues we had relative to tilefish that's addressed in the note on that line. It said we only set specifications for 2026. So we didn't do 2027 and 2028 yet. A number of the other items were completed. We have a couple that are in progress, including a couple that we're going to be talking about this week. Develop and implement strategies to improve angler compliance with our permit and reporting requirements for tilefish. Also initiate the framework action to modify private recreational reporting requirements. One of the other things that are identified there involve surveys. So we've done a golden tilefish survey for a number of years. We didn't do it this year because of money. The uncertainty with budget made us delay that. And it may be conducted in 2026. And again, that'd be pending our budget for 2026. So if we have the money, then we'll proceed with that particular survey. If we don't have the money, we won't. It's the same situation with the expansion of the South Atlantic Deep Water Longline Survey into the Mid-Atlantic. That's something that we funded, actually has happened this year. We'll fund it again next year if in fact we have the money. The next one is something that we haven't totally talked about yet. We will talk about it more this week. That says convene a joint South Atlantic Mid-Atlantic Committee to discuss the allocation of blue line tilefish between the two jurisdictions. So remember the conversations that we've had over the last couple of meetings. We had an exchange of letters. Carrie or others can tell us what happened at the South Atlantic meeting relative to the response to our letter. But we expect that we will not have that committee meet in late 2025. It's more likely to happen in early 26. So that's going to be delayed, but it will happen. Okay. Zipping right along, squid mackerel butterfish. Again, number of specifications developed, completed those. You can see on the next page again, same butterfish specifications, longfin squid. We supported management track assessments for those species and some other things as well. There's, if you look, there's a couple there that relate to contracts that will be completed in 2025. River herring and shad, those items were completed, 29 and 30. Circlam and ocean quag, we have those 31 through 33. All those are completed. Spiny dogfish, we currently are supporting an aging project as well as a bycatch reduction project. We expect that those are going to be completed by the end of the year. They're not done yet. The next thing under spiny dogfish is that framework. We'll be talking about that. That will be completed. Monkfish, we have developed specifications for 2026 to 2028 for monkfish. Remember, that's something that monkfish is a species that the New England Council has a lead for. These specifications were developed. They also, under monkfish, we have support the management track assessment for monkfish. That didn't happen. They didn't have a management track assessment because of resource issues, resource being lack of people, lack of time. So we, through the NRCC, agreed to a data update instead for 2025, and we have that. Similarly, it says support a 2027 research track assessment. That's postponed, so that's not happening. And we'll see if there's any action on that in 2026. And again, it depends on the resources that are available to the Northeast Fisheries Science Center. There's under ecosystem and ocean planning habitat, we will be talking about that omnibus essential fish habitat amendment at this meeting. So that's in progress. We continue to track offshore wind development. That's ongoing. We continue to maintain that webpage for wind. We completed the 2025 ecosystem approach to fisheries management risk assessment report feedback. Completed those other items there related to commercial landings of unmanaged species. And we continue to maintain and improve NERA, the Northeast Regional Habitat Assessment products. Okay, so under science and research, ongoing work related to NTAP, ongoing work related to that industry-based survey pilot project, and is here to talk about that this week. They got funding for that particular project, and it's depending again on whether or not the government stays shut down or not. I guess will depend on the schedule for that, right, Bobby? I think the plan maybe was to start something in early November, but depends on the ability to get government permits, and if the government isn't there, then we can't get permits. So we'll see. If it doesn't happen in early November, that'll happen early spring of next year. We did review and approve SSC membership. We're going to be doing that again in 2026. We have 5 folks that term out, so we'll be looking at those. There may be a couple SSC members that are also going to resign from the SSC. I don't think we're ready to make those announcements yet, but stay tuned. Climate and governance, some things there. Continue to track progress on those IRA-funded projects. We'll be hearing about that this week as well. We continue to work with the other councils on their projects. We continue to participate on an East Coast Climate Coordination Group and Climate Core Team. Provide support for some additional action items in 2025 priorities. Those are in progress. And we continue our ongoing work with CEFI, the Climate Ecosystems and Fisheries Initiative support team. Then there's a bunch of stuff there under general that basically tracks some of the other things that we do, including our work with MSC, tracking legislative issues, participating on the CCC, participating on the NRCC, participating on the Hudson Canyon Sanctuary Advisory Council, working on other tick reduction teams, protected resource working groups. We are not participating on MAFMC because it doesn't exist anymore. So that charter was terminated. So you can see that in the note on the side there. Continue to be involved with HMS, exempted fishing permits, and we are engaged with the New England Council's On-Demand Fishing Gear Conflict Working Group. And continuing, communication and outreach. One number of those things are ongoing or in progress, including our efforts to organize and expand our photo library. Again, making a pitch. If you have any photos that you'd like to see on our website or in any printed material, certainly talk to Mary and we'll get those into the library. Continue to work with the other councils. Mary works with them as a webmaster for their council website. We're going to be talking about the 50th anniversary of Magnuson at this meeting, and we're certainly looking forward to that. So Mary's going to talk about that this week. Someone mentioned earlier at MRIP and our EP. We continue to participate in that. Several council members are steering committee members on that. And we have training for new council members. So we have that every year. So you can see that in 2025. You'll see that in 2026 as well. That's something that new council members are required to do. And I think everyone that's new this year has signed up. So that's good. Some ongoing actions related to just wrap up. So we had a couple things that we had started that we expect to finish, and those are listed there, including the species separation amendment for circulating and quahogs, the mesh exemption framework for summer flounder, and of course all our spec packages. And none of those possible additions were addressed in 25 because we were too busy. Didn't have time, resources, or people. So I zipped through that. It was very quick. I'm going to stop, take a breath, and see if there's any questions or comments relative to all the stuff that we did and all the stuff that we did collectively in 2025. Questions, comments? Okay. So if you're ready, Mr. Chairman, we'll get into 2026.
Yeah, I didn't know if you want to give the public a chance to.
Sure. Does anyone from the public have any comments about 2025? Oh, Lori.
Thank you, Chris. I'm just wondering, I see specifications on mackerel, squid, and butterfish. The ELEX specs are set for 26 through 28. Is there a review like yearly in between so that it could be adjusted if it needed to be?
Yeah, we do an annual review. Other questions or comments from the public? Someone checking online because I don't have mine open.
Don't have John there.
I think we're good. Okay, let's talk about 2026. So at the end of the conversation today, I expect that we'll have a draft document approved by the council for the second part of this exercise, which is taking a draft list of deliverables to the council meeting in December and getting approval by the council for that particular draft with any potential changes. So again, this is something that'll happen in December as well. We would like at the end of the conversation and after we decided on the list of things that we want to do to have a motion basically conveying this document to the council in December. Okay, so that's the idea and that's what we're going to do. This is a little different than the last time we've done this because we have this executive order 14276. So remember we had that conversation the last couple meetings about the executive order, about our list of things that we were proposing in that executive order. They're sprinkled throughout here. So those are things that are on the executive order list already. Certainly you have an opportunity here. If none of those make sense to you at this particular time or you want to remove them, certainly we could do that. But just remember, we did submit our list and that went in on September 30th, right, Mary? Okay. So with that, This document is like prior year documents. It's these actions and deliverables are directly linked to our strategic plan. This document provides an overview of the activities, amendments, frameworks, specifications, and other projects the Mid-Atlantic Council expects to initiate, continue, or complete in 2026. So this is the list starting, and what I'll do with this one is I'll slow down in terms of as we go through these. So I'm going to do one group at a time. So we're going to start with summer flounder, scup, black sea bass. And basically there you have a list of 7 things, including reviewing, as we said, in terms of specifications for ILEX, we review specifications each year for these species. So 2027 specifications for summer flounder, scup, and black sea bass will be reviewed. We plan to conduct a scup winter 1 quota period landings threshold analysis. That was something that we discussed as part of that executive order. We can talk about more about that if you want. We'll be reviewing the 2027 rec measures for those 3 species. We will have our advisory fishery performance reports. We will complete the rec sector separation amendment. We intend to complete a white paper on improvements to recreational data collection and use. So remember, those 2 were linked before, and we've separated them now into a white paper and an amendment. And then last but not least, we're going to look at the where we're at with that scup DRA project and consider initiating a framework to modify the scup gear restricted areas. And that was also part of the executive order list. So with that, I'm going to stop, see if there's any questions or comments, see if there's anything that we forgot relative to summer flounder, scup, and black sea bass, or if we're good. Questions, comments? Questions, comments from the public? Okay. Seeing none, I'll move on. Bluefish is the next group. Review 2027 specs for bluefish. Facilitate development of a advisory panel fishery performance report. Also, if you look at that note below bluefish, it says deliverables of 5 and 6 in the previous section as they address summer flounder, scup, and black sea bass will also be also involve bluefish. Any questions about bluefish? Pretty straightforward. Okay. Golden and blue line tilefish. So here we are working with our committee, our joint committee. We intend to develop a 2027, 2020 through 2029 specifications for blue line tilefish. Also review the 2027 specs for golden tilefish. Again, continue to have our advisory panel fishery performance reports. Like every year, we expect to review where we're at with the private recreational tilefish permitting and reporting. GARFO provides that update to us every year. We also expect to complete the recreational tilefish reporting framework. And again, as I indicated earlier, depending on the money, we may be involved with the 2026 Golden Tilefish Survey again. And again, I think that is 2026, if I remember correctly, Jose, that would be the 5th year of that survey, or the 4 years, 4 or 5. Well, we had, Lori, do you remember?
For how many times?
Yeah, how many of
it's
the
been
20,
conducted?
yeah, how, 2026 would be the 5th year or the 4th year?
We started in 17, 20, and then 23. So this would be the 4th.
4th year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
17 was the pilot.
So the survey is becoming more and more important to the assessment for golden tilefish every year. So something that we've set as a priority for council support, and we hope that we're able to do that in 2026. Excuse me. And last but not least, support the continued expansion of the South Atlantic Deepwater Longline Survey into mid-Atlantic waters. And again, that would be dependent upon money. And that one, I think we've done for more than, my eyes can't, 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years as well? 5 years? 3 years. Okay, good. Thank you. So again, that's becoming more important. Remember, this is an expansion. So this is something that was done in the South Atlantic for a while, but we've actually added to it. And I think it's been well received and certainly important for assessment of blue line tilefish as well. So I'll stop there. Any questions, comments about tilefish? Oh, Joe, sorry, Joe.
Thank you, Chris. Just a question, looking back at the 25 versus the 26 plan, does the convening of the joint committee need to be added in here, or is that just, it's going to happen, it doesn't need to be in the implementation plan for the next year?
Yeah, we just, based on our conversations and everything we've agreed to, we just assume that's going to happen as part of that, setting the specifications for blue line. Okay. Questions, comments from the audience? Lori?
Thank you. I'm just wondering on the specifications in general, the push was to try to push out further. And when we set specifications, maybe have 4 or 5 years on the table instead of 2 or 3 or 1. So I'm wondering, I know with tilefish, it's always been said that's the perfect species to go with a longer spec package. So I'm wondering if there's a push or a goal that needs to be added in order to maybe achieve that, or where we're at with that idea.
So good point. Something that we have talked about for many years, over a long period of time. And in fact, we'll get to it when we get to the general category. And this is a conversation that we also had when we talked about the executive order. So there's 45, which says develop a white paper to evaluate potential modifications to multi-year specification frequency for council FMPs. So we want to take a look at that again. We do have the ability to set multi-year specs for a number of our species. Some of it's kind of clunky. We want to see what that looks like in a white paper before we proceed with any action. But yeah, we do use golden tilefish as an example of how things could work with multi-year specs.
So will all the mid-Atlantic species be looked at in that white paper, or?
Yeah, all of them will be looked at the white paper. We may not need to take action on all of them, right? Because we've already done stuff, right? So, but we will take a look at all of them. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Just for my own information, as the newly appointed chair of the Tilefish Committee, Joe's question about the committee work that's going to be coming up with the South Atlantic, is that expected to inform that blue line tilefish spec setting? So that when does that occur? When does the setting of the specs occur? Just for my own understanding of timing for next year.
Yeah, so I'm going to turn to my highly capable staff and give me the timing issue, but we plan to have the committee to answer the timing issue. So Hannah, you can come to the mic and tell us that. But we plan to have the committee, the joint committee that we've talked about, the South Atlantic and Middle Atlantic, that's going to meet in early 2026. Yeah, and the actual timing for the specifications is, Hannah?
So tentatively, we are planning for our June council meeting to set specifications, but we do have a little bit of flexibility since Blue Line does have a rollover provision. If we needed more time, that could happen tentatively in October. It would put us in a later timeline than we usually are, but if those conversations needed additional timing, we have that flexibility. But the goal is June.
Okay, other questions or comments about tilefish? Okay, seeing none. Squid mackerel butterfish. So a number of things there. It'll keep Jason very busy in 2026. Develop 2027 through 29 specs for longfin squid. Develop 2027 to 29 specs for butterfish. Also, we expect as part of our executive order list to evaluate alternative triple limits for butterfish. Ask the advisory panel for any input on other measures that may allow us to increase utilization of the butterfish quota. which for the last couple of years hasn't been utilized. So that could be interesting conversation discussions. We're going to be reviewing the specs, the 2027 specs for ILX, Atlantic mackerel, and chub mackerel. We're going to be developing advisory panel fishery performance reports. And remember our conversation about which assessments were going to happen in 2026 and which ones weren't. We do plan to continue to have the 2026 research and management track assessments for longfin squid. So those will happen and we'll be supporting those. So questions about squid, mackerel, butterfish? Bobby.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Just out of curiosity, depending on the outcome of the work that the Squid Squad's been doing for longfin, barring the acceptance of that and passing a peer review, I believe it's in February, is there a plan to take that same model and move it or migrate it over to ELEX and try to do the same thing as far as to try to evaluate for an actual assessment, or is that something that's going to be kind of put on the back burner?
Yeah, I'll ask Jason if he knows anything about that, but I don't. Jason?
I think it depends on which model ends up being used for longfin. We have both what was used for ILX has been transferred to longfin as kind of a backup. So that's kind of already some potential alignment there. Then the kind of like monthly based, length based kind of analytical assessment. They have been looking at that for ILX, but I don't think it would be like an automatic just transfer. I think it would have to go through kind of its own assessment, research track assessment process, probably, but they have to go through some kind of assessment. It wouldn't just be automatic, I think.
Okay, other questions? Yeah, Mike Benny?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chris. So I think I appreciate that you added my suggested idea for Squid Mac or ILX Squid in-season action to the possible additions, but I wonder if it's worth having a conversation now, because ultimately my objective with that would be to have it added to the list of deliverables for 2026.
So I would prefer to wait. We will have the conversation, certainly. You know, we have a category of possible additions. Right now, we have 2 things on the list. We may have more. So we're gonna have, you know, conversation about whatever appears as on that list when we get done, but certainly we will get back to that. Other questions or comments about squid, mackerel, butterfish? Okay, not seeing any. Surf clams and ocean quahogs. So pretty straightforward specifications, develop 2027, 2028 specs for surf clam and ocean quahogs. We will have advisory panel fishery performance reports. What will be different in 2026 is that we have this EO project, which would be to develop a white paper on the ITQ programs for surf clam and ocean quahogs. And that we would expect that would be handled by a contractor, not staff. And again, that would be obviously dependent on us getting money for 2026. Pretty straightforward. Any questions on surf clam and ocean quahogs? Anybody? Lori. And by the way, Lori's not sworn in as a council member yet. So Lori is still a member of the public. So I got to go to the council first, then I go to Lori. So Lori.
Thank you. I'm just wondering on the ITQ program improvements, is that just the push from the executive order, or is that also industry looking for improvements?
So this was a conversation that we had the last meeting when we talked about the executive order, and we staff provided a list to the council to look at that included this, and that list was available to everyone. We didn't hear much from industry relative to the proposal. The council liked it, certainly in terms of keeping it on the list. We sent it into the administration as part of our package in response to the executive order. So yeah, we plan to move forward with it. Other questions or comments? Okay. Spiny dogfish, pretty straightforward. Remember, that's a joint plan with the New England Council. We have the lead. It also involved the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. I have to mention since Bob's here, right? So that is a straightforward list. Review the 2027 specs for spinies and develop a advisory panel fishery performance report. The next item, a little bit more there, ecosystem and ocean planning habitat. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Just noting under spiny dogfish, because you don't have it listed under possible additions. There was a letter from the New England Council based on a discussion and motion that they made at their September meeting regarding the dogfish exemption area, gillnet exemption area.
So I do remember the letter, but I'm not remembering what we needed. Well, Jason, I'll turn to Jason,
Yeah.
if you're
and-
okay with that.
So that's in the multi-species regs. So they would have to change some, there'd be a ground fish action, I believe, in communication with New England staff, and they'd be asking the Mid-Atlantic to participate in that, which I generally track the ground fish actions already as kind of part of other duties.
So Mike, I turn back to you to explain that a little bit, more in terms of what the actual, what's the issue? What are we talking about?
So I'm going to actually see if the maker of the original motion in New England would be happy to speak to it, Ted Plath.
Thank you, Mr. Pentony and Mr. Chair. So this is a motion for the Southern New England exemption area. It is a ground fish motion. It was designed to protect ground fish from small mess fishing at certain times of the year from May 1 until October 31. This impinged upon the fishing ability of the monkfish and now what I would call the monkfish skate fleet because that's when the dogfish show up. And so we've essentially lost our dogfish fishery because the dogfish are out of the area by the time we're allowed to fish small mesh nets. Codfish has was the point of concern, and with changing migration habits and significant diminishment of codfish, they don't show up much when we go dog fishing anyway. The desire was to expand the season and move it a month forward and a month later in the year to facilitate day net fishing by the monkfish skate fleet and allow them to access dogfish, which is one of the components that kind of drives the bus for the inshore fishing fleet.
Mike.
Yeah, so I think, the reason I mentioned it is just, as Jason noted, and as suggested in the letter from the New England Council, it would require some participation from Mid-Atlantic Council staff at a minimum if the New England Council moves forward, which I believe they intend to do based on the motion.
Okay. So with that, given the conversation, I don't see anything that we need to add to our implementation plan for 2026 with the understanding that staff will be involved in that particular New England action. Okay, everybody okay with that? And that letter, Jason, remind me, did we include that letter in the briefing book? Or is that something I sent out?
It might not be, I'd have to dig through, but we'll make sure you have it and it can be forwarded around to the council if it wasn't already. Yeah, so the council theoretically could note it, but there are often lots of New England actions that we kind of participate on an ongoing basis. I think in the past, we generally wouldn't have kind of like had them as a line item in the implementation plan.
Okay, all right, thank you. With that, is there anything else on spiny dogfish? And Ted, if you could turn your mic off so that, yeah. There you go, thank you. Okay, moving on. Ecosystem and ocean planning habitat. So we have a number of items there, including completing that essential fish habitat amendment. Remember that we had a conversation regarding that executive order that related to deep sea coral protection areas. So we agreed to develop a white paper on that particular issue. We will be developing a 2026 ecosystem approach to fisheries management risk assessment report. We'll be reviewing the 2026 Mid-Atlantic State of the Ecosystem Report. like we've done every year for a while, develop an annual report on commercial landings of unmanaged species, something that Julia does for us, working with CARFO staff and others. We'll continue to maintain and improve NERA products, Northeast Regional Habitat Assessment products. We'll continue to track offshore wind development and continue to manage that offshore wind page for both the Mid-Atlantic and New England Council. Any questions about those items? Any questions, comments from the public on any of this? Okay. Okay, science and research. We will continue to coordinate the NTAP, Northeast Trawl Advisory Panel. Anna is the staffer involved with NTAP. Also, we will continue to support the regional industry-based trawl survey. As we mentioned earlier, that may be more of a lift for next, well, we may be involved this year as well as next year. So we'll see. But we definitely are continuing to support it. And as I indicated earlier, we're going to be looking at new members for the SSC. So we'll send a solicitation out towards the end of the year. We'll see who is interested. Obviously, see if the current members are still interested and then provide that to the council in early 2026. Any questions on science and research? Okay. Next, yes.
Eric has his hand up if you don't mind. No.
Eric?
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Just a quick shout out to Ms. Hart. She's done a great job with NTAP and the NTAP working group, and it's been a pleasure to work with her. She's been really busy, and she's done a great job. Thank you.
Thanks for saying that, Eric. She has been very busy, and she's going to stay busy, so that's good. Okay. Anything else on science and research? Okay. Climate and governance. So we will be talking this week about our IRA funded projects. We have 8 of them. That involves considerable staff time. It involves a lot of coordination. We have most of these projects have associated contracts, or we're planning on getting a contract associated with them. So those will keep us busy in 2026. You can look at the list there. I'm not going to read those to you. There's also IRA funded projects that are being conducted by the New England and the South Atlantic Councils. We're involved with some of those projects as well. Staff serve on working groups and are helping those with those. We expect to continue to participate on the East Coast Coordination Group and Core Team, and as well as providing support for addressing ECCG action items of 2026 priorities. Finally, we will continue to participate on CEFI. Any questions about any of those? Okay. Any comments, questions from the public? No? Okay. The next category is general. So this one, we were waiting to see what New England was going to do with this particular topic, which is evaluate vessel baseline restrictions and consider initiating an omnibus management action in coordination with the New England Council. So they decided as part of their 2026 activities, as I understand it, to undertake this particular issue. As such, we've included it in our 2026 implementation plan as well. So we'll be working with New England on that particular item. And this was part of our executive order list as well. So this is something that we've been kicking around for a while. More recently, we had a question that Hayden addressed a couple council meetings ago relative to recreational interest, but certainly it's been something that we've talked about. So it's good that it's on the list. As I indicated earlier to Lori, on the list as well as this white paper to evaluate potential modifications to multi-year specifications, the frequency of those. So that'll be something that we'll look at in 2026 as well. It's important, we don't talk about this a lot, but it's important that staff continue to be involved with the MSC certification and audits. So a number of our species that we manage are MSC certified, and staff are directly involved in those audits that occur, like, I think almost annually, but, you know, certainly with a high enough frequency that we put it on the list. We will continue to track legislative issues and develop comments as requested. We'll continue to participate on the CCC and NRCC. We'll continue to participate on protected resource working groups and take reduction teams. We'll continue to participate on the Hudson Canyon Sanctuary Advisory Council. We will continue to develop comments for HMS as needed and continue to develop comments on accepted fishing permit applications. Any questions, comments about the general category? Okay, seeing none. Do we have a couple hands? Jeff, I'm looking at the screen here. So turning to the public, let's go to Lori first. Lori?
So the baseline restrictions is commercial and recreational
Potentially.
across
Yeah.
the board?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we haven't, you know, fleshed it out, but it certainly would involve commercial. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, there's no baseline restrictions
For recreational. Yeah. I'm trying to remember the issue, and Hayden can help me with this, the issue that we had with the recreational individual in New York. Oh, he wasn't recreational, it was commercial. Oh, okay. All right. So just commercial. Yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry about the confusion. Other questions or comments? Jeff Kalen had his hand up. Jeff, are you online?
I am, Chris. Thank you. Good morning, Council. Sorry I can't be there. I just wanted to comment on 46 and thank you, Chris, and also the staff, Hayden, and all the other FMP coordinators, Jason, the other ones that have helped us with the MSC process over the last several years. I think it's 7 or 8 years. And I think in New Jersey now, something like 85% of the fish landed in New Jersey is MSC certified, which is, you know, gives us access to markets that we might not otherwise be able to get into, as we've talked about in the past. So I just wanted to thank the staff at the council and for keeping this on the list. It's a huge help. As much information as we can provide, the process makes sure that it's verified by your professionals, and we appreciate that. So I just wanted to give everybody a shout out on that. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that at the council meeting in Gloucester, I was there, and unfortunately, even though I asked the council to make a motion to support this council's focus on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service squid tax issue, I couldn't get a motion out of the council, which was really disappointing on that issue, frankly. So anyway, just wanted to make that point. I know that Garfo has an interest in the issue. I've talked to Mike about that. So just wanted to report back that was not a happy outcome in Gloucester. I thought it was unfair that the group up there wouldn't support that, because it certainly benefits squid fishermen in that region. So anyway, I'll stop there. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Jeff. Other questions or comments? On the last issue that Jeff brought up, that was part of our list that we submitted as in response to the executive order. So it's something that we continue to track. I've been contacted by folks in the administration who are interested in that particular topic as well. So I expect that we may see some action on it in 2026, hopefully. We've been involved, Mary, since 2019. Yeah, so 20. Yeah, so 2020. So take a look, if you're interested, take a look at our website. There's actually a page devoted to it with all the letters, all the background material, anything that you're interested in, you can check it out. So again, we'll see. Hopefully something happens in 2026.
Yeah, I want to give Mary a shout out on that issue too, for sure. Chris, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Other questions or comments about the general category before we move on? Okay, and just to be clear, Vessel baseline restrictions relate to commercial fisheries. Okay. All right, moving on, outreach communication. So a number of things there. We'll be hearing about our 50th anniversary campaign at this meeting. Hard to believe, but yep, it's been 50 years of Magnuson next in 2026. So Mary will be talking to us about that this week. As we typically have on our list, conduct public outreach and communication, develop communication products to support understanding and awareness of the council. We will be continuing, we being Mary, will be continuing to manage the Regional Fishery Management Council website. We will collectively continue to participate in MRIP. And we will continue to support and participate as necessary in NOAA Fisheries annual training course for newly appointed council members. So we have, for folks that don't know that, we do have staff involved in that particular training. Jessica has done it for a number of years now. And in fact, they expect that Jessica is going to do it every year, you know, so she's deeply embedded in that particular process at this point. Questions about any of that? Okay. We won't get everything done that's on our 2025 list. So there are staff wrap up items that are listed under that particular category, 59 through 63, including the spiny dogfish framework, the Atlantic mackerel framework, the alternative gear marking framework that the Garfo has had the lead on. We expect that everything should be wrapped up for that surf clam and ocean quag species separation requirements amendment. And finally, all of the 2026 specification packages should be buttoned up as well. So any questions about that? Pretty straightforward. Okay. So now we get into the fun conversation about possible additions. So there's two things here. And certainly if there's other things that folks have thought about and would like to see on that list as a possible addition, we certainly could put it on the list for consideration by the council in December. If in fact we want to move anything up from possible additions into the other categories that we've talked about this morning, we can talk about that as well in terms of our ability to actually do anything in addition to what is on this list. This represents a pretty full plate in terms of our ability to get it all done. And certainly we don't want to add things to the list that we're not going to be able to address. So we don't want to do that. But there is a little bit of room, and certainly we can talk about that in terms of doing some additional things. So one of the things under possible additions, I'll start with the first one, is to develop a white paper on the application of sector-specific management uncertainty buffers. And this is a topic that Michelle's going to address. It's one that we talked about before. It's one that we talked about in our conversations at the August meeting as it related to management uncertainty, scientific uncertainty, and how best to address it. There is a document that Julia and staff have put together for us that's in the briefing book now that deals with management uncertainty as it relates to the monitoring committee discussions and the role and responsibilities of the monitoring committee. So keep that in mind as we talk about this particular item. But Michelle, I don't know if you're ready to talk about this yet or not, but just before you speak, there are additional materials that were posted to the website or posted to the briefing book. You can take a look at for background. And with that, Michelle, would you like to talk about those? Michelle.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moore. Yeah, just, considering the conversations that we had at our August council meeting in discussing the staff recommendations, I think in particular for summer flounder and for bluefish, where, fishery stability was a significant component of those discussions and, where, and I raised the topic then of, the relationship between the ACL setting framework and optimum yield, and how the council, the National Standard 1 guidelines allow for the council to, consider those ecological, economic, and social factors when setting their annual catch limits. And, I think as we discovered, unfortunately, our current regulations sort of don't allow a lot of flexibility for the monitoring committees when they are, developing their annual catch limit recommendations. And so for folks who've had the opportunity to take a look at the supplemental document that I sent to Chris and Mary, and that's posted on the website, I think there could be the opportunity to use an omnibus framework that would adjust the ACL regulatory language for most of the council's managed species. I think just as an example, currently many of the FMPs require that, the monitoring committees, shall recommend to the Mid-Atlantic Council separate ACLs for, say, for example, the commercial and recreational summer flounder fisheries, the sum total of which shall be equal to the ABC recommended by the SSC. If that language was replaced with something a little bit more flexible, such that it was, shall be equal to or less than the ABC recommendations of the SSC, that would give some additional flexibility to account for social and economic issues of fishery stability, I think, and not require us to try to back some of those into management uncertainty. I realize there's a lot of, there's some gray area there, but, so my proposal that Mary has copied and pasted here would be to, consider development of an omnibus framework to adjust the council's ACL specification regulations is needed to provide monitoring committees additional flexibility in their ACL recommendations. So I am under no illusions that there is a lot of, staff time or resources. This is primarily administrative in nature, but I just wanted to get it out there. A lot of times some of these below the line possible additions will come up for discussion in later years, recognizing that we're not able to get to everything. So thank you, Chris, for the opportunity to speak to this. And, if I don't know if you would like this possible addition in the form of a motion. If so, I am happy to make that, or if it's, the consensus of the council to accept that. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. So we can handle this one of two ways. I think from a staff perspective, below the line is the appropriate place for this, right? So keeping it as a possible addition for future consideration, I think, is the way to go. And that relates to a number of things, including, most importantly, staff resources. So this is something that as we go through 2026, if we find ourselves at some point, twiddling our thumbs and looking for things to do, this might be something that we think about. But given what I'm looking at for 2026, given the list of things that we already have in front of us, I'd like to keep this below the line. Having said that, we could just all agree that this would be placed here. And then once we're done talking about any other possible additions and where those things are going to go, just approve the entire document for council consideration in December. So I don't think we need a motion at this point. If everyone agrees that that language, the way that it's written there, would be 64, the possible addition. If everyone's okay with that, then I think we're good. Any issues, any problems? Do you want the motion? Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Just a question, because I haven't really given much thought to how the regulations are different for the different monitoring committees as far as flexibility goes. What's the history behind that? Does it just kind of happen, on a FMP by FMP basis, or is it kind of more in line with how the monitoring committees are comprised? Because the monitoring committees are are different among the species, where like summer flounder, scup, black sea bass, and bluefish are kind of basically like the technical committees for ASMFC, where other monitoring committees are kind of a mix of scientists and managers. I didn't know if that was maybe some of the basis for the different regulations that kind of bound the monitoring committee as far as ACLs and such.
So it's a mix of all of that, right? So if you take a look at that paper that Julia and staff put together on the monitoring committees, you see it's sort of a hodgepodge, right? And it really is species dependent. It's also dependent on the regulations that were put in place to basically direct the monitoring committees and their roles and responsibilities. But some of it is happenstance, like you said, just in terms of how the monitoring committees have evolved over time and the folks that have, participated. And like you said, some of the committees are big. We have a lot, technical folks, others not so much. So it's really interesting from that perspective. How do you want to handle this particular topic, Mike?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so in looking at this, now that I can put my glasses on, I can see it. There was definitely an issue at our last meeting with an understanding as to the roles of the different advisors to us. The SSC's role, in my mind, is pretty straightforward and clear. The monitoring committee, there was a little bit of blurriness in that. We got the recommendations kind of went all over the place at our last meeting. So I think that this would be a good thing to open up to consider defining some roles and perhaps, exploring ways that the monitoring committee can feel maybe more heard through their advice. But my concern with this is that flexibility, when I look at this as flexibility, I only see it going one direction, honestly. I don't, with the SSC kind of providing the umbrella over to the extent that the council has an ability to adjust specifications and quotas. I think that if you do if you're factoring in monitoring committee concerns, it's only going to just always lower the quota. And that's just a concern of mine. Their role now, I think, could be better defined. And maybe that's where we ultimately get to with this. I'm comfortable with leaving it on the list, and I'd like to take some time and talk with my staff that are on these committees to find out from them what it is they would like us to, think about as well. I'm not prepared at this point for any type of motion. I don't know that that's necessary, but so I support this right now. Whether or not that changes in December will be based on a lot of, I guess, conversation between now and then. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Michelle?
Thank you, Chris, and thanks, Mike. I appreciate those comments. I think, if you've had the opportunity to read through the paper on the monitoring committee roles and responsibilities that staff put together, it's very clear to me that the council always has the latitude to adjust whatever comes out of the recommendations of the monitoring committee. So I guess maybe I understand the concern about, if adjustments to the regulatory language, give flexibility to the monitoring committees to recommend an annual catch limit that is less than the ABC provided by the SSC, that's only one way, but that still maintains the council's purview to, not necessarily accept that ACL recommendations. Our ceiling is the ABC that's recommended by the SSC. I think the other thing, I appreciate those concerns. I think the other thing is that I do see this wording under this proposal as being slightly different than number 64, which is developing the white paper on the application of sector-specific management uncertainty buffers. I certainly think that they are related, but I guess when I read 64, I'm thinking a lot more about the tools like what the Bluefish Monitoring Committee and Technical Committee have developed, something that is, you know, more of a flow chart or a quantitative means to try to capture what the management uncertainty actually is. Whereas I think what I'm proposing is, you know, providing flexibility to the monitoring committees to recommend, you know, an ACL for the commercial and recreational sectors that may be less than the ABC coming out of the SSC's deliberations. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Before I go to Chris, you know, I didn't think about this as an addition as much as a replacement for 64. But the way that that you've just described it suggests that maybe we just add it to the list. So then we have, this would be 66 if in fact folks thought that that was a good idea. Okay, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And I appreciate that distinction between 64 and what you're proposing, Michelle. And yeah, I think, yeah, I support it as a possible addition, and kind of learn a little more about this. You know, I've kind of highlighted some of the differences between the monitoring committee makeup, and yeah, I'm familiar with summer flounder, scut and black sea bass and spiny dogfish, serving on both in the past, and yeah, they operate a little differently. And I think as we develop this, we need to think about just what kind of role we want the different monitoring committees to play, and, you know, kind of focus more on summer flounder, scut and black sea bass, and I guess bluefish too. They definitely serve more as a technical body, and, you know, we always, like, you know, with the ASMFC TCs, we really try to keep them to the technical merits of issues and not delve too much into management. Whereas the monitoring committees, it really depends on what, you know, their makeup is and what their role ultimately is. And I think it's going to be something that we need to consider if we, you know, take this up as a possible addition of, you know, the trade-off between the flexibility and maybe some dual roles here between what the monitoring committees do and ultimately what the council will recommend. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? So if we all agree, what you see in red would be added to the list as a possible addition. Consider the development omnibus framework. So that would be 66. We'd keep 64 on the list as well. Is anyone opposed to that idea? Sonny.
Thank you. Can you explain this a little better for me, please? You want to add this to our list when I'm not too you know, too privy on what exactly what we're trying to do here. You know, after I looked at the names on the monitoring committee, I had to ask myself, number one, does the MSA require us to have a monitoring committee? Which it doesn't. And I just have a feeling that, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus or anything, that do we actually need a monitoring committee? The SSC tells us pretty much what to do. And the monitoring committee, from what I understand, is there to recommend and check their math. And now we're asking them, the monitoring committee, to do a lot of other things that's not, to me, is not their job. So you know, I'm kind of having a problem with this. And so I would say no.
So given that, Mr. Chairman, it sounds like we may need a motion for that particular proposal from Michelle. So Sonny, your reference is only to that language in red, right? Consider development. So with that, we need a motion. We'll see how that goes. To your point relative to the roles and responsibilities of the monitoring committee, that's something that we plan to discuss this week. In the briefing book, there is a document, a paper, background paper that was prepared by staff in response to the conversations we had in August. The monitoring committees have been part of the council system for a while, since the 90s. But you're right, there's no requirement in Magnuson that says we need to have monitoring committees, but they've served us well, from my perspective. As someone that served on monitoring committees, as someone who chaired monitoring committees, I was glad that they were around to help me in terms of developing recommendations for the council to consider. We can fine tune the roles and responsibilities of the monitoring committee. And again, we can talk about how that might happen when we get to that part of the agenda. But I understand, what you're talking about, certainly. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to you, I guess, for a motion.
Okay, so just going back to Chris's earlier hopes of
They were dashed.
accepting the 64 items before the committee, 2 of those as possible additions, and then the most recent discussion was for the item in red. I just want to lay this out for everybody. And whether or not that could be added to possible additions for 2026 as item number 66. So without just full consent, and we'll continue to have a discussion once we get a motion, but we're looking for a motion that would either add or omit the item that we saw in red, which we have here as well. So we have this in front of us now. So I'll thank you. All right, thank you. So let's see. I'll look for hands. Is anyone willing to make the motion that we have before us? Shell, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to add the following to the possible addition section of the 2026 implementation plan. Consider development of an omnibus framework to adjust the council's ACL specification regulations as needed to provide monitoring committees additional flexibility in their ACL recommendations.
Thank you, and thank you for reading that in. So we have a motion from Michelle Duval. Mike Petney, you're seconding? Yes. Second by Mike. Michelle, I think you've given some rationale, certainly. Is there anything else you want to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think there is anything else I need to add at this point. I just want to make sure that, my overarching concern is really that, we are able to consider other factors within the optimum yield framework as part of our ACL setting process, as noted in the National Standard 1 guidelines, without trying to fit everything under the rubric of management uncertainty. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Mike, a seconder?
Yeah, thanks. Michelle captured it really well. Just, remembering back to our discussions in August, they were really awkward and I think confusing to a lot of people, including the members of the public. It put the onus on the staff to try to come up with a proposal that differed from the monitoring committees in the words they used, but got at the same outcome. And I think that all of that could have been avoided if the monitoring committees had had the flexibility to make an ACL recommendation that was less than the ABC, which is where we ended up for several stocks. It's not something that I expect would happen every year, every species, but there are circumstances in which, the monitoring committee, the staff, and the council can see a path forward where the sum of the ACLs would be less than the ABC. And calling that management uncertainty or calling it something else or creating some weird language to accommodate that just introduces confusion and uncertainty into the process. And I think the language that Michelle has put forward here, I think, solves a lot of those problems. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the table, and Michelle has read that in. Any discussion on the motion? Jim Gilmore.
Thanks, Chairman. So when I read this thing and I read it briefly, and I was kind of like, along with Mike's comments, seems like well, there's 2 points. First off, we're only going in one direction, essentially that we would lower it. And I mean, it was more of a reevaluation, understanding the SSC's recommendation, what essentially comes out with the rule is like, that's all we can do is lower it. But I guess the question I have is how big a problem is this? I mean, we got an issue of workload, and has there been any outreach to the monitoring committees to find out how frequent this, how big an issue is this? Or is this more of a small thing that has happened that we're trying to address, and to balance how much effort we're going to put into fixing a small problem? So I'm a little reluctant to support this. Generally, I'm okay with it. But on the flip side, it's like, I really don't understand the magnitude of the problem at this point. So based upon what we would be taking away from other things to do this, I have a concern about it. Thank you.
So thanks, Jim. The reason we have this other category of possible additions is basically because the list above the line is basically everything that we can do at this point in 2026, more or less, right? So when we're talking about possible additions, we're talking about things that we might want to get to, or that we might get to in 2026 if we have the resources available and if the council wants to consider doing them, right? So this is a possible addition, right? In terms of your question, what's the problem? So we had this, as Mike characterized it, awkward conversation in August relative to the role of the monitoring committee. And it seemed to me at that point that we really needed a background document to provide us with some additional information so that we could basically understand exactly what the role of the monitoring committee was, how it was supposed to work, and whether or not we did have a problem or not. As Chris indicated earlier, each monitoring committee is different. They've evolved over time. So we have in the Bluefish Monitoring Committee a framework or a model that allows for evaluation of management uncertainty, right? Which hasn't been evaluated. So that's something that we may want to talk about at some point in time. But I think what I'd like to do, Julia, if you're online, very quickly, if you could, summarize what's in that monitoring committee document so that folks might appreciate what's there now, and certainly we can talk about it later if we have time. Julia.
Sure. Just do a sound check first. Make sure you guys can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Cool. So just to reiterate that this is a document that's in the executive director's report of the briefing materials. So if people want to look at it, you can find it there. It just summarizes the role of the monitoring committees. It notes that they were all established through the FMPs. Their membership was established through the FMPs. So any changes to that presumably would require a change to the FMP. It notes that the Omnibus ACLs and AMs amendment laid out the whole flow chart of ACL is less or is equal to the ABC, and then the ACTs are set less than or equal to the ACLs. So it has some background on where that came from. And then I think another important part of this memo for the purposes of this discussion is that it does also have a summary of what it means for management uncertainty, scientific uncertainty, and optimum yield. And then it includes a table with examples of several times that different ACTs were set less than the ACLs for reasons that weren't just management uncertainty, that there are examples in the past of buffers being set at the ACT level that were due to things that are more in line with scientific uncertainty or optimum yield, and that those are things that have been approved and implemented even if they didn't fit the strict definition of management uncertainty, and that the monitoring committees aren't strictly bound to only considering management uncertainty. And then it also notes that the council is not bound by the monitoring committee's recommendations. So even though the FMPs might say that the monitoring committees need to recommend ACLs that are equal to the ABC recommended by the SSC, that the council doesn't have that same restriction. The council could recommend lower ACLs. It's just the monitoring committee in the regulations and the FMPs is bound to recommend ACLs that are equal to the ABC. But everything from the monitoring committee is just a recommendation to the council. So the council already does have some flexibility in terms of recommending lower ACLs. So happy to take any questions if any of that was unclear.
Thank you, Julia. That's very helpful. So therein lies the rub. Remember, the monitoring committee makes recommendations that you all can reject, right? Other questions or comments on this particular topic? Mike Benny?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to remind everybody, there's a lot of text in the National Standard Guidelines, National Standard 1, that speak to, ABCs coming from the SSCs and the development of ACLs. And, it says things like ACLs cannot exceed the ABC. So I think that's clear for us. But then it goes on to say things like, the ABC has an upper limit on catch that prevents overfishing. Other factors could be considered, such as ecological, economic, and social factors when determining the greatest benefit to the nation. These types of considerations can also be considered in the ACL framework. For example, an ACL could be set lower than the ABC to account for ecological, economic, or social factors. And that's all in the National Standard Guidelines, but it's not within the purview of the monitoring committees right now. They cannot do that because the regulations are written that they have to recommend ACLs that add up to the ABC. And so really what I think this motion, if it is, adopted and then ultimately it becomes something that the council works on, is simply to reconcile the National Standard Guidelines with the council's regulations so that that flexibility exists. It doesn't have to be used, but the flexibility exists. And it avoids some of the really awkward, Rube Goldberg-esque language that we used in August to get at the outcome that I think everybody was looking to achieve.
Other comments or questions? Yes, Sonny.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. And that's why I said something about this this idea to have this conversation so that I can more understand what it got. And it's been a good conversation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments? So, Mr. Chair, I think we're ready to call the question, if you're ready.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that, Chris. So, since we did have some hesitancy, I will ask for a show of hands. All of those in favor of the motion, and that is to move to add the following to possible additions, the possible additions section of the 2026 implementation plan to consider development of an omnibus framework to adjust the council's ACL specification regulations as needed to provide monitoring committees additional flexibility in their ACL recommendations. And that motion was made by Michelle Duvall and seconded by Mike Pentany. All of those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Okay. Yep. Okay. There we go. And all those opposed? Okay, thank you. Any abstentions? Not seeing any, so. Okay. Mary, I had 11-3, no abstentions. Is that what you had, or?
I just want to make sure that it's just executive committee members that are voting.
Yes, thank you. Yes, sorry, Mary. So we're going to have a much smaller vote, and apologies for that. And so the reason behind this is this particular agenda item is the executive committee trying to move this, the 2026 implementation plan over to the full council in December. So my apologies, everybody. That's what this vote is right now. So XCOM members and and Michelle, we have you online. So if XCOM members could please, starting again and motion, or sorry, hands in favor of, please raise your hand for XCOM members. Okay, here we go. Okay. Yep. And those opposed? And I don't think there's any abstentions, Mary, because I think we have all XCOM members in favor. So, so the motion is approved to add this to the possible additions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So that now lengthens our list of possible additions by one. If we include the ILX issue that we're going to talk about next. So number 65 is to evaluate adaptive ILX quota system to increase U.S. quota when domestic fishery is strong and NAFO catches are below 5,000 metric tons. So this is actually an issue that Jason and I talked about prior to receiving the proposal from Mike Pentney and Garfo. That proposal is attached to the briefing book. It's titled Proposal for an In-Season ILX Squid Quota Increase. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Pentney. Certainly, Jason, if you could come to the table, that'd be great as well. So with that, Mike.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chris. So this is something that a number of people have been discussing for a number of years, which is sort of recognizing that we have, essentially one large stock or population of ILX squid that spans, the Western Atlantic, but it's managed both as a U.S. fishery, U.S. ABC, and then an international separate TAC, we call it, under NAFA, the Northwest Atlantic Fisheries Organization, which is the RFMO, that's relevant. And that the U.S. fishery obviously waxes and wanes. Some years it's very strong and they go out beginning in June and catch almost the entire quota within a period of a couple of months. And some years it's less strong and the squid just aren't as available. And similarly in NAFA waters, we've really not seen much utilization of that quota. And so over a number of years, we've been talking about how can the U.S. get access to additional quota in years when the squid population is strong and the fishery is strong. So we've been thinking about a number of different things, and kind of this year, while Eric Reed and I were sitting at the NAFA meeting, kind of just had this idea kind of gelled to treat it as an in-season action and develop some triggers where if the triggers are met, then we would have the authority, the regional office would have the authority under the regulations, as we do in some other circumstances, to increase the ILX squid quota, by a certain amount. And the numbers that are in the proposal are really just placeholders. Even the 5,000 metric tons that is listed here under item 65, I think that's a placeholder. It could be higher. But the idea is that, if the U.S. fishery is really, if they found the squid and we're in that period in July when landings are really strong, and NAFO catches are not strong, they're not catching squid in the NAFO area, then we would have some flexibility to increase the U.S. quota by 5,000 to 10,000 additional tons. Something that would be safe in terms of not risking overfishing of the overall population, but still providing meaningful access to the U.S. fishery to access those squid when they're there. And as I think a lot of in-season actions are something that can be done relatively quickly within a week. So it saves us the trouble of having to go back and forth between the council or SSC review. It would just be, instead of a closure notice, we would be doing the opposite. We would be doing an increased notice, and then we would continue to monitor landings. And so it's on the list for possible additions. I'd really like to see it, move up into the list of priority actions for 2026. I don't think it's a substantial action. I think the triggers are pretty straightforward. We might debate some of the numbers, but other than that, I think it's a fairly straightforward action, and happy to answer any questions. I have floated this, just a note, with some industry members, just to make sure that that was something that they could actually utilize, and have heard some good support for this. I talked with John Hare before the shutdown to see if, from the Science Center perspective, they would support looking at something like this. He supported that as well. So.
Thanks, Mike. Jason?
Thanks for that, Mike. I think, as I know, as it was constructed here, which was, slightly, we had to do it before we got your more detailed proposal. It's not set up as an action, but as an investigation and possible addition. So there's two things to consider there. The other thing, that NAFO quota was constructed in a very arcane fashion, based on pretty old data. And so we looked at this a few years ago, and it's really unclear like how that would apply to kind of sustainability on the U.S. shelf. And I don't know, is Dr. Rago online currently?
Yes, I am. Thanks.
Is it okay if I ask Paul a question about this? Thanks. So Paul, your analysis well, the center may have run it subsequently, but that you developed, that's used to set the current ILEX ABC, is looking at the abundance of squid in the surveys, and then squid at in ranges of availability to the surveys to get a sense of a range of biomasses on the U.S. shelf, and then compare that to what the U.S. might catch. Is that generally an accurate description of how we kind of decided that 40,000 metric tons should be fairly safe for U.S. ILEX ABC?
Yes, that's basically the methodology.
So, it's we haven't really evaluated what would taking more than 40,000 from the U.S. shelf area mean in terms of, what portion of ILEX on the U.S. shelf are kind of safe to take. So that was the idea on terms of here setting it up as an evaluation, to try to say, okay, well, we know that NAFO quota is out there, but we really haven't evaluated. Well, we have evaluated. Paul has ascertained the risk of higher quotas, but that's kind of it's a separate question of like, what is the biological risk if we take out more ILEX from the U.S. shelf? Because that if we increase it here, it wouldn't be coming from the NAFO area, right? It'd be coming from the U.S. shelf area. Yeah. So we have that information and what the additional risk is. I think, Paul, right? You evaluated takes way above 40,000. So there's a science risk question there besides, and from my initial reaction, besides just like, an administrative thing of adding to the quota.
So thanks, Jason, for that. You're right. What's here is different, a little different than what Mike's proposing, because Mike is proposing an action. Here we're proposing an evaluation. Sounds like a large part of that evaluation has already been done. Am I characterizing what you said correctly?
I think so. Paul, you evaluated a pretty wide range of ABCs, right?
Right. One thing I might add at this point is that the analyses that were done were focused on the totality of all surveys across all years. So those surveys and in which which were high and also the catches were high might need to be isolated in terms of this particular action. Here we're looking at the rate of change of the quota within a year as a trigger, as a potential trigger, and then what would be probably useful to just verify is that in circumstances like that, in which the catch was taken rapidly, within a short period of time early in the year, what would the consequences have been of a higher quota at that point? So basically restricting the analyses to a smaller set of survey years, such that you could more quantitatively assess that risk. So that would be one way of addressing this. It was fairly straightforward and not a terribly intensive.
Jason?
And I think one other thing I'll flag is I don't think we've ever had a closure at the current ABC quota level yet. We've had closures at some slightly lower quotas, but since it was bumped up to 40,000 metric tons, I don't think we've had a closure in catches at that level. So again, that's why it kind of was expressed here as we knew this was kind of in the works. Mike was thinking about it. It came out to try to, evaluate potential impacts of that as kind of a first step. Anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Jason. So in terms of, well, before I say anything, I'll turn to Bobby. Bobby, you have a question?
Oh, yeah, I just kind of a little confused on this, the way it's being presented versus my understanding of it. I mean, we have the US quota that we set, which not for nothing is basically that it's kind of an ad hoc number. It was increased. And Jason is correct that since we had the increase, we have not had a shutdown of the fishery, but we also have not had a strong availability of the species to the fishery. But the way I was looking at this was to be able to utilize within a year any underutilization of NAFO quota for the US quota. But realizing that it's two separate areas, it's still considered an oceanic stock, and it's not. So that's where I'm confused. Is if we're talking about over harvesting a certain sector of it, but technically it's already accounted for, because what happens if you have a year where we do actually harvest our total quota and we get shut down, but NAFO also harvests theirs. So there's, that theoretically the science has already been done. That's how these numbers were derived to begin with. So I think we kind of might be, my personal opinion is I think we're kind of looking a little too far into it. I think, this idea has been floated around quite a few times. It's always had tremendous amount of support from the industry, but it's discussions like this that kind of always muddy the waters, that always kind of make it stagnant. So thank you.
Thank you. Mike Penny, did you have a response to that?
No, I mean, I think that kind of hits on some of the issues. We've got, 34,000 ton quota in NAFO waters that's basically never been even close to fully utilized. And then the 40,000 ton quota for the US based on the SSC's recommendation. And Jason's right. They looked at things up to 60,000 tons, I believe. And so, this proposal would keep us within that range, but only, provide those additional opportunities when, the U.S. fishery is strong and the industry is finding the ELX, and NAFO is not. The vessels in NAFO waters are not. So, if you consider it, and it's probably not completely accurate to consider it as overall a 74,000 ton quota, but certainly it's in the ballpark, theoretical ballpark that both fisheries could harvest those individual quotas for an oceanic, single population. So again, just trying to recognize that there are times when we've had to close the ILX fishery when it's going very strong. And if there's an opportunity to leverage some of the underutilized quota in NAFO waters to enhance, U.S. opportunities, and that's something I would hope we would support.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of where we're at, this proposal is not only the proposal to be added to the document, above the line, right? So that's something else that we should talk about. as I understand it, if in fact we wanted to do this, the framework would be relatively straightforward. It's an administrative, it's an adjustment that would allow Garfo to make that in-season adjustment if in fact it was appropriate. To actually do that, we're going to have the background material to support that kind of action. So that's why I asked Jason earlier in terms of the evaluation, whether or not it's already been evaluated. Sounds like the answer is sorta, right? So we need to develop we need to do the evaluation. If in fact it takes us down the path that suggests a framework is appropriate, then we do a framework, right? The evaluation would support the framework. So when I talked to Jason about workload for 2026, his ability to take on something like this, given the fact that we already have some of the work done, and given the fact that if in fact we decide to do a framework that would be relatively straightforward, this is something that we could add to the list above the line under squid, mackerel, butterfish, right? But the understanding needs to be that we may not do a framework if in fact the evaluation indicates that we're going to have problems, or that we don't need to do it. As Bobby indicated, that there's maybe this uncertainty relative to where we're at with NAFO and the council quota system. So with that, I think evaluate and potentially or possibly develop a framework adjustment may be the appropriate language for this particular proposal. And moving it above the line would be appropriate under those circumstances, or with that language change. At least that's my proposal. So with that, I know that there's a question. Michelle, you had a question?
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, just quickly. So it seems like the what hasn't been done is, and maybe this is a question for Mike Pentney, is sort of identifying those specific percentages noted in the proposal, those two triggers. It sounds like, I mean, there were a couple of examples given of 40% and 20%, but it sounds like that might be the thing that needs to be just identified more clearly, I guess. Is that correct? Given that a lot of other work has been done by Paul.
Mike?
Yeah, I think I was leaving it to the development of a framework, if the council goes there, to actually put the, specific numbers in that would be under consideration, allowing for some debate, hear from the industry, and look at recent performance in both the U.S. fishery and the NAFA fishery.
Paul, did you have a comment?
Just a quick one. Yeah, I think the direction of the motion is appropriate, and I know that there will be some concerns within the SSC concerning the nature of this action, as well as the risk consequences. So how that is developed, will be important to the members of the SSC. So I think at this point, a need for the consequences of this type of action, the nature of the trigger, and the magnitude of the catch increase and their implications for the risk would be kind of central concerns of the SSC.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions? So in terms of where we're at, we have a proposal to basically, with two parts, move this above the line. I suggested a possible word change. I don't know how Mike feels about that, or maybe that's covered in initiate and develop. So how would you like to proceed with your proposal, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, Chris, I'm fine with your language, evaluate and potentially develop, I guess. Was that what you were proposing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. But I think, I guess the question is, are we in agreement to move this above the line, as you suggested?
So staff recommendation is that we move it above the line based on the understanding of the workload associated with this particular action. So that the language that you've added, Mary or Jason, to 65, you could put it in that Garfo proposal and use that language there. and we'll move that up to squid, mackerel, butterfish. Again, Mr. Chair, I don't know if you need to make this a formal motion, but it's up to you.
Jason, did you have a question or comment?
So the text change here that Mary just put in would change what was there to evaluate and potentially develop with a framework this adaptive approach. I think that would basically capture what's in red without, in terms of the typical length of our little implementation plan items, would capture the intent there.
Instead of 5,000, we could say specified threshold.
So I'm just trying to just double check what you actually want for
So
language.
Thanks, Jason. We have a proposal on the table from Garfo that's been modified with that, the additional wording, evaluate and potentially develop. So I think at this point, I'd like that proposal considered. And certainly let's decide whether or not the council's in favor of it now.
Okay, so reminder, this is a question to executive committee as we're going to be moving this forward for staff's development, and then the full council will be voting on this in December. So Mike, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't know if you were looking for support. I certainly support it. I like the change in the language. Before initiating a framework of some kind, an evaluation is the first thing in my mind that happens. So I like it. I think is based on what staff said, we can move it up above the line, and I'd support that, presenting that to the council in December.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask this then. Is there any objection to moving this above the line? Just XCOM members. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what we're moving above the line. Are we moving what's in red above the line, or are we moving what's currently in 65 above the line?
Right. So the intention is that the current red text, and if you want, I could read that, but would be replacing item 65 as a possible addition. And it's actually a combination, not just replacing. And so that evaluation, along with the potential development of the framework, will move above the line. Okay, I'm seeing some heads, so I don't see any objections to moving the red text above the line. So with that, I think we have all the potential actions, Chris.
So I'll open it up to see if there's any additional suggestions for possible additions before we wrap it up. Bobby?
Thank you, Mr. Moore. The one thing I'm a little curious on is number 64, the development of the white paper on the application of sector-specific management uncertainty buffers. That seems kind of broad. And at our prior meeting, we had the conclusion of the white paper from the SSC on separate OFLs and AFLs for sector separation. Would that be something as a continuation of that, as that was kind of alluded to then? I gotta look at the actual text here. I'm sorry. There we go. Yeah, which would basically be, having the SSC evaluate the relative scientific implications of the management uncertainty buffers versus the scientific assessment implications of the current settings. So is that something that is very broad, or is this speaking to a specific item that is, I'm just trying to figure out how to look at that.
Yeah, I think the way that you present it, looking at it from a broader perspective, is the way to think about it, right? So it might involve a number of things, including what you just said relative to SSC involvement. Other comments, questions? Okay, so now's your chance, last chance, possible additions. Anybody? So we do have some comment. Do we have hands online? So go ahead, Joe.
I see one hand from the public online, Jim Fletcher. Jim, it seems like you're off mute, but we're not hearing you if you want to try again. Sorry, Jim, we're still not able to hear you. Stephen, I don't know if we want to, maybe if we can get him to put a comment in chat and we can look at that. But Chris, is there anything else? If not, okay. Give Jim a chance here.
So, yeah, what we need at this point is just a motion to approve the draft document as modified today. I think Mary has that. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mary. I'm going to look to Jim Gilmore. Would you like to make this motion? Would you mind reading it in for us? Thanks.
Move to approve the draft 2026 proposed action and deliverables as modified today for inclusion in the council's 2026 implementation plan, and direct staff to develop the full plan for review and approval by the council at the December 2025 meeting.
Thank you, Jim. Do we have a second from Joe Grist on executive committee? Any further discussion from executive committee? Not seeing any. Any objection to moving this forward as is? Okay, very good. Then we will do that. And so staff will prepare this for the December meeting for the full council's vote. Okay. Anything else, Chris, on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, everyone, for the discussion.
Okay, great. So my first meeting, I got the trains running a little late already. So with that, what we're going to do is we'll take a break for lunch here. We'll break until 1:30, and then we will reconvene. We'll do a little housekeeping, and then we'll move on to recreational tile fish permitting. Thanks, everyone.